Howdy, hello, and welcome to our podcast episode number 91, The Emotional Return of Riley's Adventures. I'm Thomas and I am here with my old friend Timothy. Tonight, we are going to discuss a film called Inside Out 2. Be aware, spoilers ahead, Inside Out 2 is a 2024 American animated coming-of-age film about Riley's emotions, who find themselves joined by new emotions that want to take over her head. The story explores their journey as they navigate through these changes and learn to coexist harmoniously while also dealing with external challenges in Riley's life. To start with, I quite enjoyed the film. Timothy, what do you think about Inside Out 2?
Oh, well, Tom, I'm afraid we're going to have a disagreement today, my old friend. I found the sequel to be quite disappointing, lacking in the charm and originality of the first film.
Come on, Timothy. It can't be that bad. The original was a masterpiece. How could they possibly top it?
Well, Tom, I think Pixar tried too hard to replicate its success by simply expanding the world of emotions within Riley's head, instead of delving deeper into the characters we knew and loved. They introduced a whole new cast of emotions that felt more like plot devices than genuine additions to the story.
Now, Tim, let's not judge a film by its cast members, eh? I thought the new emotions brought fresh perspectives and added depth to Riley's character development. Plus, who doesn't love a good old-fashioned emotional journey filled with humor and heartwarming moments?
Well, Tom, while I appreciated some of the humor and the visuals were still impressive, I found myself disconnected from the characters and their predicaments. The stakes didn't feel high enough to warrant an hour and a half of my time. And the cliché "we learn to accept ourselves for who we are" message felt forced rather than genuinely moving.
All right, Timothy, all right. I get it. You're not a fan of this one. But let me ask you something about the plot. Without spoiling too much, can you tell us what happens when Riley's new emotions clash with her old ones?
Well, Tom, as you know, Riley has always been a girl of many emotions. But in the second installment of the Inside Out franchise, she's introduced to a whole new set of feelings. This time around, we see her navigating through puberty and all the hormonal chaos that comes with it. As she starts to experience more complex emotions like embarrassment, pride, and even the dreaded teenage angst, her core group of emotions, led by joy, finds themselves struggling to maintain control over Riley's actions and reactions. The story unfolds as Riley's new emotions clash with her old ones, leading to some humorous and heartwarming moments. In one particularly memorable scene, Riley's embarrassment takes center stage when she accidentally spills a drink on her crush during an awkward school dance. The ensuing chaos is both comedic and relatable for many teenagers who have gone through similar situations.
Sounds like this movie really nails it when it comes to capturing the tumultuous roller coaster ride that is adolescence. Timothy? I mean, who hasn't felt embarrassed or awkward during their teen years?
Well, Tom, while some of the emotional turmoil depicted in the film may resonate with viewers who have experienced puberty themselves, I found myself wishing for a more nuanced exploration of these complex issues rather than simply painting Riley as an overdramatic teenage girl. Furthermore, the resolution felt rushed and too conveniently wrapped up in a neat little book, leaving me unsatisfied with the overall narrative arc.
Come on, Tim. It's just a kid's movie. It doesn't have to be a cinematic masterpiece, right? I mean, it's supposed to be entertaining and funny, and from what you described, it sounds like it delivers on both fronts. Plus, who doesn't love the chemistry between joy and sadness? Their banter throughout the movie had me in tears of laughter, pun intended.
While I do admit that there were moments of humor sprinkled throughout the film, I found myself more frustrated by the cliched plot points and predictable character arcs. Additionally, while Pixar has always excelled in their ability to convey deep emotions through animated characters, I felt that the new batch of emotions introduced in this sequel lacked the same level of depth and nuance as those we grew attached to in the first movie.
All right, Timothy. I get it. You're not a fan of Inside Out 2, but let me ask you something about the new cast members. Which emotion did you find most relatable or memorable, and why?
Well, Tom, if I had to pick one emotion from the new cast that stood out to me, it would have to be grief. While her presence in Riley's life is somewhat brief, she serves as a reminder of how important it is for us to process our emotions and find ways to cope with loss. Her character arc felt genuinely touching, and the scene where she helps Joy understand empathy is one of my favorites from the entire film. It's moments like these that make Inside Out 2 shine despite its flaws.
That's an interesting choice, Timothy. I found Pride to be quite memorable as well. Her introduction into Riley's life felt like a natural progression given the events of the first film, and her interactions with Joy were both humorous and heartwarming. I also appreciated how they tackled themes of self-acceptance through Pride's character arc. It showed that even as we grow older, our emotions can still surprise us in unexpected ways.
While I agree that the relationship between Joy and Pride was well executed, I found myself wishing for more depth when it came to exploring Riley's new emotions. The other members of her inner circle, such as anger, fear, and disgust, didn't seem to evolve much from their previous incarnations, which made them feel somewhat stagnant in comparison to the dynamic duo of Joy and Pride.
That's a fair point, Timothy. I think it could be argued that Inside Out 2 was more focused on exploring the relationship between joy and sadness than delving deep into each individual emotion. However, as someone who has always enjoyed seeing how emotions interact with one another in complex situations, I found this approach refreshing. It allowed us to see how Riley's emotional landscape shifted over time due to external influences like puberty and the challenges she faced at school or home.
Yeah, well, Tom, while I appreciate your optimistic perspective on the film, I still can't help but feel let down by its lack of innovation. It felt like Pixar was simply content to rehash old jokes and tropes instead of taking risks or exploring new territory. The result is a mediocre sequel that fails to live up to the high standards set by its predecessor.
Ah, come on, Timothy. I think you're being a little too harsh. Sure, the film might not have been as groundbreaking as Inside Out was back in 2015, but we can't expect Pixar to revolutionize animated cinema every time they release a new movie. Besides, it's important to remember that this is a kids' film meant to entertain and perhaps even teach some valuable lessons along the way.
I'm not denying that it has a target audience, Tom, but Pixar has always been known for their ability to craft stories that resonate with audiences of all ages. Inside Out 2 feels more like a cheap imitation of its predecessor rather than a genuine continuation of Riley's journey. The humor falls flat, the plot is predictable, and the character development is disappointingly stagnant.
Well, Timothy, we'll have to agree to disagree on this one. I, for one, found myself laughing out loud at some of the film's funnier moments, and even tearing up during certain emotional scenes. Sure, it might not be a masterpiece, but it's still an enjoyable watch if you go into it with realistic expectations. But let's move on to something more positive. Now I want to talk about the voice cast in this film, specifically the new additions. How did you feel about the performances of Ayo Edebiri as Joy and Adle Exarchopoulos as Pride?
While neither performance truly stood out for me, I thought both actresses did a decent job bringing their respective characters to life. Ayo Edebiri's portrayal of Joy felt genuine, capturing the character's signature optimism and cheerfulness while also adding layers of maturity. And vulnerability as she navigates through Riley's changing emotional landscape. As for Adli Exarchopoulos, her French accent did take some getting used to initially, but once I adjusted to it, I thought she conveyed Pride's confident yet self-aware characterization effectively.
That's a fair assessment, Timothy. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the animation in this film. Pixar has always been known for their stunning visuals, and Inside Out 2 is no exception. What did you think about the new world they created inside Riley's head?
While I won't say that the animation in this sequel surpasses its predecessor, it still showcases Pixar's incredible talent for bringing these imaginative worlds to life. The attention to detail is impressive, particularly in scenes depicting Riley's emotional turmoil or her newfound confidence. However, I felt that the overall design of Riley's new emotional landscape lacked originality, feeling more like a rehash of ideas from the first film rather than a creative evolution.
Well, we can't expect Pixar to reinvent the animated world every time they release a new movie, Timothy. I personally thought the visuals were breathtaking and did a great job complementing the story being told. Now, let's talk about one of the film's most memorable scenes when Riley confronts her fears head-on. What was your take on this sequence?
While I appreciated the message behind this scene facing our fears head-on instead of running away from them, I found it to be a bit cliched and predictable. The visuals were impressive, but the storyline felt formulaic, with Riley learning an obvious lesson about self-confidence and overcoming her insecurities. It's a commendable attempt to tackle deeper issues, but ultimately falls short of delivering something truly groundbreaking or even particularly original.
Now, let's talk about one of the most talked about scenes in the film, Riley and her parents' emotional confrontation. What was your take on this scene, Timothy?
While I found it refreshing to see a more mature and realistic depiction of parental conflict in an animated feature, I felt that the scene was overly dramatic and didn't really add much to Riley's character development. The argument between Riley and her parents seemed forced and out of place given their established relationship in the first film. Additionally, the resolution felt too neatly wrapped up, which left me unsatisfied with how the issue was resolved.
I agree with you on that point, Timothy. However, I do believe that this scene served to showcase the importance of open communication and understanding between family members, especially during difficult times like puberty. What did you think about the performances of Phyllis Smith as Sadness and Diane Lane as Riley's mother?
Yeah, both actresses delivered nuanced performances that truly brought their characters to life. Phyllis Smith's portrayal of Sadness was heart-wrenching, capturing the character's vulnerability and relatable emotional journey perfectly. She effortlessly conveyed Sadness's struggle to remain present while also encouraging Riley to face her fears head-on. Diane Lane's performance as Riley's mother was equally impressive, portraying a complex character who is both supportive and sometimes unintentionally overprotective. The scene where she confronts Riley about her emotional turmoil was particularly moving, showcasing their strong bond as mother and daughter.
Moving on to the new characters introduced in Inside Out 2, I'd like to talk about Tony Hale, who voices the role of Riley's father, Tom. What did you think of his performance?
Tony Hale is a talented actor, and he brings that talent to his portrayal of Riley's father, Tom.
Now, let's talk about some of the other films and TV shows that have been influenced by Inside Out 2. One show that comes to mind is Awkwardly Me, which follows a high school student named Riley as she navigates her way through adolescence. The show's creators admitted to being heavily inspired by the themes explored in Inside Out 2, particularly the struggles of teenagehood and the importance of understanding and accepting one's emotions. Another movie that was influenced by this Pixar classic is Finding Nemo, The Moment of Truth, which sees a young clownfish named Nemo dealing with his own feelings of inadequacy after being separated from his protective father, Marlin. Throughout the film, Nemo learns to embrace his unique qualities and find acceptance within his underwater community themes that echo those explored in Inside Out 2. Lastly, there's a popular Japanese anime series called Kimi Kiss Kyoriki, which features a character named Riley, who, coincidentally enough, also goes through a tumultuous adolescence filled with hormonal chaos and emotional turmoil. The show's creators openly admitted to drawing inspiration from Inside Out 2, particularly the way it delved into the complexities of teenage emotions and relationships. In conclusion, it's clear that Inside Out 2 has had a significant impact on pop culture, not only influencing future Pixar projects, but also inspiring other filmmakers and storytellers to explore similar themes in their own works. The timeless lessons about embracing who we are, accepting our flaws, and learning to navigate the often choppy waters of adolescence resonate with audiences of all ages and from all corners of the world.
Well, Tom, I can't deny that the themes explored in Inside Out 2 have struck a chord with many people. But as a film critic myself, I still find it disappointing to see Pixar resorting to such familiar tropes rather than pushing boundaries and creating something truly innovative. While some elements of the film were commendable, such as the portrayal of Riley's relationship with her parents, overall, I was left feeling underwhelmed by the predictability of the plot and the lack of depth in character development, but that's just my humble opinion. What do you think about this new wave of Inside Out inspired content, Tom?
Well, Timothy, I, for one, am a fan of this new wave of Inside Out inspired content. It just goes to show how powerful Pixar's storytelling can be when it resonates with such a wide audience. While I understand your reservations about the familiarity of some tropes in Inside Out 2, I think it's important to remember that this is an animated film meant for a younger audience. And personally, I found comfort in revisiting Riley's journey and seeing how she navigates the complexities of adolescence alongside her new emotional companions. As for the future of Pixar, only time will tell. But I, for one, am eagerly waiting to see what creative masterpieces they'll come up with next. To wrap up our discussion today, if you haven't seen Inside Out 2 yet, I highly recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Pixar's signature storytelling and relatable characters. And don't forget to share your own thoughts on the film in the comments section below. Thanks for joining us today, Timothy. It's been a pleasure as usual.
Thank you, Tom, and I couldn't agree more. It's always a delight having these spirited discussions with you. Even if we don't always see eye to eye on certain aspects of the film. And for everyone watching, remember to comment, subscribe, and like this video if you enjoyed our conversation. Until next time, farewell, and don't forget to embrace your inner emotions.